Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be showing from the Oslo Esports Cup. It is the first event of the major tournament series, that is the $1.6 million Meltwater Champions chess tour. Jan-Krzysztof Duda versus Magnus Carlsen. It features a very cool opening and you guys will really enjoy this one. Features an exchange sacrifice and well, the quote above the board by David Bronstein really sums up this game very well. Hope you will agree with this. Now let's check out the game. There is quite a lot to enjoy. Duda has the white pieces and opens with e4. Now, like I said, this is a rapid event. Players will be playing 4 games of rapid, and if that ends in a tie, of course, they will go to quicker time format. So here e4, and we all know what Magnus plays when he is faced with e4. He plays h5. That, of course, is a joke. He plays c5. He goes for the Sicilian defense. I'm just checking if you guys always know what's happening. Knight to f3. We have e6, d4, challenging the Sicilian, and now captures and captures. And we have a6 by Magnus, going for the Khan variation. Checking if Duda has something prepared for this. He plays bishop to d3. This is the modern way to challenge the Khan structure. Bishop to c5 attacking the knight, knight b3 attacking the bishop, and the bishop to a7. And now it seems like the g7 pawn has been left a little bit weak since the bishop no longer guards it. You might play something like queen to g4, but black would just ignore you. Knight to f6 attacks the queen, and it's never a good idea to capture this pawn here. If you do this, then we can play bishop captures on f2, and that's a problem. If you capture this guy, then we're going to play rook to g8, attack the queen, and after this queen h6 move, which is the only square available for the queen, we're going to pick up the queen with this beautiful fork. So the variation is still playable, but after knight to f6, you can't go pawn grabbing, you have to go back, queen to g3, and then the game continues. So while queen to g4 is a viable option, Duda says, all right, Magnus obviously prepared this very well. Let's just play a nice calm queen to e2. Knight to c6, Magnus continues development, and now bishop to e3, challenging this very strong bishop, as Magnus did spend quite a few moves getting it all the way from f8 to a7. So d6, we have knight to c3, and now knight to f6. We have f4 now, grabbing more space here, and now still deciding whether to castle kingside or queenside, and Magnus strikes with b5. Duda plays a3, not allowing any b4 ideas to challenge the knight on c3. And here Duda advances the pawn. Magnus advances the pawn to e5. And the situation on the clock is Duda has some 8 minutes on the clock, Magnus 12 minutes on the clock. So he's doing a little bit better there. And there is a game where castles was played here, but here Duda plays bishop captures on a7, and it is now as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. Magnus grabs the pawn back, the piece back with the rook. Rook captures on a7. Now he has very nice control of the 7th rank, and later on you can even play rook to d7, maybe to try and get this pawn all the way to d5. We know that that's what you usually do with this pawn in a Sicilian defense, and Duda closes the center with f5. So here Magnus plays knight to d4, and he asks Duda, what do you play here? And now this is the point of preparation that Duda is meeting, and it's a rapid game. I never seem to be able to stress this enough. The best way to counter this is by playing queen to f2. Now, of course, it seems like the knight can't move because the rook on a7 would hang, but we can just capture the knight because the rook on a1 would be hanging as well. And now after c captures, we're going to play rook d7, trying to get this d5 move in, and that's how you want to play this. However, Duda played knight captures on d4 first. Magnus captured back, attacking the knight here, and now played queen to f2, which is kind of giving Magnus a deadly dare. But Magnus, after spending a minute on deciding, decides to capture it. He's very much a lot on clock. It's 5 minutes versus 10 minutes for Magnus. So he captures, gives up the rook on a7, queen captures on a7, and now c captures on b2, attacking the rook on a1. So rook to b1, and now this is all worth it because of this queen to a5 check. So we are not going to allow white to castle, and maybe even defend the passed b2 pawn. So here king to e2, and now Magnus just castles. The absolute best way, probably if this was a classical game, would be just to defend the pawn, but Magnus wants to open up the center as soon as possible. And now, even after something like queen b6 going after the pawn, we're still gonna castle. So it's maybe better to give up this pawn than pile up on the e4 pawn. We're just attacking it with everything. Rook is coming to e8. It would be very difficult for Duda to survive this. But Magnus wants to play very actively. He just castles. We have queen to d4. Duda centralizes the queen back. attack now puts more pressure on the b2 pawn, so now you can't really defend the pawn. Rook to e8, going after the e pawn, and now rook h to e1, giving up the f5 pawn as the e pawn is pinned to survive the attack. So bishop captures on f5 by Magnus, king to f1, and now bishop back to g6. So you have this position. Magnus still down the exchange, but he has a very, very active position. Rook captures on b2. Finally, Duda gets rid of this pass pawn. Queen captures on a3, Magnus creating another pass pawn now, and here comes rook to b4. Here, Duda kind of misses the opportunity to force a queen trade with queen to b4. There's no way to actually avoid this trade, and it would be very good for him. But then again, it will not be incredibly easy playing this endgame, especially since it's rapid and as Duda is very low on the clock. So here we have rook to b4, now blocking the queen's defense of the d6 pawn. Duda wants to capture the pawn. Queen to a5, and now queen captures on d6. We have h6. Magnus creates some breathing room for his king, and now comes rook to d4. We have knight to g4, and now comes h3, kicking the knight away, knight to e5, and now queen to c5. So what can Magnus play here? Well, there are quite a lot of ideas here. He plays queen to d2, gets the queen out of the way from the a file. Now you can start pushing your pawn if an opportunity presents itself, and it's Duda to play. So can Duda take advantage of this rook x-raying the queen on d2? Not really. The problem is if you play anything like bishop captures on b5, you open up a discovery here, queen f4 check, and you just wasted a perfectly good bishop. So after queen to d2, Duda plays rook to d5, threatens to win material here, and Magnus defends it with f6. Now this is one of those positions where f6 is a fine move to play, especially since Duda is incredibly low on the clock. He has some 30 seconds, whereas Magnus has 2.5 minutes. So here we have queen to e3, now offering a queen trade, and of course Magnus declines. He wants as much stuff on the board as possible for Duda to waste as much time as possible. Queen d4, we have bishop to f7 now. Challenging the rook here, rook d6, now knight to c4. And here Duda should again just consider capturing, but I think due to low time on the clock, he just trusts Magnus that this is good for him, because if captures, Duda can just play king f2, and he retains a better position. However, here rook to a1, attacking Carlsen's queen. Queen to d2 now, seemingly now Duda can trade here and open up a discovery to the black queen, but now after bishop captures on c4, which is the absolute best move for Duda, queen f4 check, king to g1, and bishop captures on c4. We have rook to d8, Duda finally gets rid of Carlsen's rook on e8, rook captures on d8, queen captures on d8, and now king to h7. And now rook back to e1 to guard the e5 pawn. But now Magnus plays queen to e5, he will put a bishop on e6, and as the queen is on e5, it's not going to be all that easy for Duda to come up with a viable plan. So here, queen to d7, now comes bishop to e6, attacks the queen, queen to d3, now a5. Now the pawns start marching forward, and it's not going to be easy to stop them. We have c3, preventing b4, but now Magnus pushes a4, and here, your only way of continuing this is queen to d4. There is no other move for Duda besides that, but he played rook to b1, and this, of course, allows Magnus to just break through with those pawns. We have a3, now a2 is coming, rook to a1, and now an even greater threat, b4. Now, of course, you cannot capture because queen captures rook on a1, so king to f2 was played, and here Magnus just played b3, and it was in this position on move 43 that Jan-Krzysztof Duda resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. I would ask you to pause the video and figure out what happens if rook captures on a3, but I know everyone sees that queen to c5 check picks up the rook, and that's why, of course, Duda had to resign the game here, as the pawns are now unstoppable. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I hope Bronstein's quote sums it up very well. So it wasn't really an examination of knowledge, but actually a battle of nerves. Magnus had long-term pressure. He sacrificed the exchange, and Duda fought well. Took him too much time, and in the end, he just didn't have enough time to continue fighting back. So yeah, that's the game, the first game of the Oslo Esports Cup. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Next one coming is the one that already you guys have suggested, and I see that suggestions are coming as I'm recording for the Fan Forest Pragananda game. So that one is coming up next. I would like to thank Prathamesh Shekhar Mahajan, USFD EFRI, USFD EFRI, Nicholas Padal, and Andrew Dabrowski for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing with the game that I just mentioned. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.